Welcome to episode 213 of Come On You Reds, the postseason edition. Gareth Wheeler and Terry Dunfield with you for another week of Toronto FC talk. We were hoping that the postseason edition would come a little bit later, circa maybe mid-December, but here we are, Toronto FC fall to Nashville in extra time in their first round MLS Cup playoff matchup. We'll go through the game, what went wrong, what went right for Toronto FC on Tuesday. We'll dish out our annual Dunnies. It's the Terry Dunfield Awards with the help of yours truly. And we'll look ahead what needs to be done in the offseason. Where does Toronto FC go from here? I'll pull back the curtain a little bit. I tried to call Terry Dunfield post-match on Tuesday night to go through a little bit of a debrief. He went dark on me because he, like a lot of other Toronto FC supporters out there, just had to walk it off. He just went out into the city lights and walked the streets alone to collect his thoughts. Are you okay now, pal? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good. That's exactly what I did. I just went out for an hour-long power walk.
See, Eric Giacometti, usually on After 90 Minutes, right after the game, we have banter, we have talk, we break down the game. He went dark on me as well. My two boys, E.G., by the way, happy birthday to our very own Eric Giacometti. Hope he's celebrating with lots of leftover turkey from American Thanksgiving. He left me solo, so I had to riff for 15 minutes about what we saw in Hartford, TFC v Nashville. I pulled it together, Terry. I kept it together, but I was thinking about you boys.
I thought you said it was the best post game of the year.
Not supposed to say that out loud.
No,
and then I had my glass of scotch and just drown my sorrows to a certain degree because it was a disappointing night, and that's where we're going to start this week.
I'm still not quite over it. It's a tough one to swallow, and before we get really into it, like. Nashville are a good side, but you know exactly what you're coming up against. They're not better than us. And, there's just that little bit of regret, which makes it hard.
That was kind of my thesis. That was my main point coming from Tuesday night. You can accept if you lose a game, but I didn't really like how it all played out because you just felt like there was just so much more on the offer. That just didn't come to fruition for whatever reason on Tuesday night. Did you kind of feel the same way, Terry? I guess you did by saying that TFC is a better team.
And then you add the sacrifice, what we've been through over the year, the highs of sitting on top of the table for so long. You just feel a little bit underwhelmed. And, it's I'm sure the players are shaking their heads. They're probably glad they're not playing in the Canadian Championship final. I think it's probably best that they just get home and just recover, and take a big deep breath and start to focus for January.
What I was thinking throughout, and this is where playing in Hartford is such a reliability. It was such a heavy field. You're not playing in ideal conditions. They battled with that over the course of the season, kind of slowed things down and played to a pace which Nashville was comfortable with. But if you're playing in BMO Field, you got a little bit of a crowd behind you. It draws out a little bit more energy. You're able to dig a little bit deeper. As a player, and Terry, you've been there before, it has to make all the difference in the world playing in front of a stale, just an atmosphere that's not suited towards you, rather than playing in your own home where there's a little bit more bounce. I think back to last year's first round playoff matchup against DC United. Over the course of the first part of that game, Toronto FC didn't play all that well, Terry. There was times where they had to grind it out, but in that atmosphere and that crowd, once that first goal went in extra time, then the rest, they all kind of came after. It can have just a big influence on a game.
Let's do a little exercise here. This is what came to mind. If we both just shut our eyes for a second, think about BMO, and it's a playoff night under the lights, what comes to mind?
The noise. It's the noise.
The noise. Smoke in the air, the crowd right on top of you, that big stand, a really slick playing surface where that ball can shift quickly. If it gets a little bit difficult, the south end can suck you into that goal or be a wall for you. And you've got one or two just playing with mad intensity, raising the standards of the group. Now shut your eyes and just think of Hartford. It's dead. There's no atmosphere. The pitch is heavy. When we need a hand from the crowd, it's not quite there. If you look at all the playoff games this year, more or less every single home team has won. Hartford wasn't home. And you're now playing against a motivated Nashville side that has a clear way of playing. And as the game goes on, they just build a little bit more momentum. So that's what I'm visualizing right now, man. And the whole game, it was like a training session, Wheels. I don't know if you agree, but it was like attack versus defense. You saw the same phase of play the whole game. Nashville sat back with their 2 blocks of 4 and 2 kind of running around. Michael would drop deep to get past the 2. And now we had to go to work breaking down those 2 blocks of 4. And to do that, you've got to be precise. That ball has to move quickly. You have to open up those gaps. Those gaps just got tighter and tighter. And as it starts to go like this, now you're thinking, what are they giving up? Well, they're giving up space out wide. We're not really built with a ton of athleticism and pace and players that can exploit that space out wide that they're now giving us. But we have to be able to be precise breaking down that low block. And we saw it at 25 minutes when De Leon had that opportunity. We progressed up the field really well. There's a nice exchange of Potsuelo and Josie Altidore. Piatti's in, and it's a great cutback. But we needed more of that.
Yeah, we should kind of walk through that play individually. Let's do that in just a moment.
That's it.
I mean, Terry, like I found myself yelling at the screen saying, come on, boys, let's go. Like you wanted to find that second, third, fourth gear. It just never hit. It never hit throughout the match. I think it was the lack of atmosphere. I think that they just were completely out of gas. Physically, mentally, emotionally. And I've had people hit me up after making those comments say, you know what, they had 16 days off. It's not that easy just to turn on a switch. In fact, not only in Major League Soccer, these teams that have had these crazy amounts of time off because of the international break, it's happening in the Liga MX playoffs as well. These teams that have had 2.5, 3 weeks off, it takes them a little bit time to get going. And we saw that over the course of the season. After layoffs, Toronto FC didn't come out at their best, their most sharp. So, and Greg kind of warned about this heading into the game. He said, well, these other teams, have played just a few days prior. Some might think it's an advantage having more rest, but I prefer us to get up to speed. And they simply didn't get up to speed. They never got up to speed through 120 minutes of football.
Yeah, I think the warning signs were what happened against Philly, New York City, and the Red Bulls, that we were going to have to get after it. And to be honest, I don't know how you felt. I never really felt kind of like under threat. Like I never felt like, other than maybe a set piece in the first half, Nashville were going to hurt us. I didn't think they hurt us in transition at that point. It was only maybe a set piece, but we didn't quite have that flow or that rhythm that we see at BMO in the playoffs. And so if you take a step further, okay, why? What's the why? We spoke about the pitch and the stadium, and I think you need players to have good games. And if you go through the team right now, Wheels, especially the spine of the team, who was outstanding on the day? I'd say guys were good. They were fine. They weren't hiding. But to just add energy to the group, you need guys bossing each other around the pitch. And it was just a little bit flat at times.
Yeah, it was. One thing I will point out, and we'll get into this a little bit later on, when you're looking for freshness, energy, the ability to have a little pace, break a line, Nashville's average age of their outfield 10, so in their starting 11, was 26.2. Toronto FC, 29.2. That is 3 full years older. I'm no mathematician, but I can do that math. That's an older starting 11, Terry, that Toronto FC played on Tuesday night, and what we've seen across Major League Soccer. And youth doesn't guarantee you anything, but it's being a little bit younger, being a little bit quicker, being a little bit more agile at times like this. And over the course of a long, demanding season, I think it caught up to this group a little bit. Just being a little bit of an older side was a detriment in a pandemic year when you have games every, weekend and midweek. And I think it caught up on the group. And certainly when your training facility, you're not able to go into the BMO training ground and have state-of-the-art training facilities all the time to manage the players the best that you can. You have a hotel, convention space or lobby space that's turned into your training room. It's nowhere near the same. And I think that all these little things kind of add up as well.
Yeah, the hotel actually sounded kind of fun. They had this boutique hotel to themselves and could just hang out with the boys. But after a while, especially when results turn, players love to make an excuse. It's never the player's fault, and it does grind on you. You miss your family, you miss your routine, so that's difficult for sure. It's probably tough, and it'd be interesting to hear, if possible, Ali's perspective on it. To bring players in and to make a ton of roster changes in a pandemic year. So I think coming out of MLS is back, the team's top of the league, or there or thereabouts. You've got a decision. Do you? And there's also a ton of credit built with what this group's done over the last 4 or 5 years. Do you ride or die with this team? Or do you look to freshen it up? And I think the way the team freshened it up was they brought academy players up, and we saw 5 TFC academy player debuts this year, which was a huge positive on the year. But I think the club decided to ride or die and go with the tried and tested, what works. And you know what? They were the top.
You have to. You have to, right, Terry? Like you have to.
You do. But I think now on the back of that Nashville, you just start to question it a little bit. And I think that they're the next kind of cycle of this group. We saw a cycle after Javinko and Vasquez left. What does that next cycle look like?
Well, certainly over the course
we continue to ride or die.
Over the course of the regular season, Nashville basically played the same starting 11 each and every time out. Like their back 4, Zimmerman, Johnston, Romney, Lovitz, all under the age of 30, and all of them have started 20 games or more out of the 25 that they played thus far. I mean, that's incredible consistency, and they're a well-organized group. And I don't want to take anything away from Nashville, but I'm absolutely with you. Toronto FC on another night, another day, shoulda, coulda, woulda come out and won this game. I want to get into
Will, just quickly on that other point I'd say is, look, TFC were the protagonists on the night. We controlled the game in possession, and you spend a fair bit of energy doing that. There was no interest from National to regain the ball. Maybe if they lost it, they might try for a second to get it back, but they just sat back in their blocks, and then almost like a jack in the box sprung out of that kind of defensive shape. And I think that's why, that to the eye is a little bit why they looked a little bit fresher than us as well. Right. And went in transition in the second half, man, they were dangerous. And the big boy Cadiz held the ball up well. And I thought when you play a 4-3-3 system, where you're a little bit exposed is in the wide areas with opposition fullbacks getting forward. And I thought the 2 fullbacks for Nashville, Johnston and Lovitz, were excellent as well. They were.
Omar Gonzalez said similar Friday that he thought the team personnel was good enough to beat Nashville. And, I absolutely, I wholeheartedly believe that's the case, but Toronto FC just didn't play that well in the night. There's no getting around it. They decided to play a 4-2-3-1 formation. That's a little bit different with Michael Bradley playing in the double pivot, because typically he plays in that 3-man midfield. He plays central. You have Osorio to one side, Delgado to the other. Marky Delgado, a big miss in terms of his running, his energy, his ability to slot in beside Michael and just complement that core. And that's something that Greg Benny has said to me on multiple occasions. Like, look, over recent years, the Altidores, the Javinkos, the Vasquez, they've been match winners. But that midfield 3 provides the platform for them to do so much. Well, instead of that midfield 3, it was a midfield 2. Do you think it worked? Did it not work? What do you make of, Pozuelo playing a little bit higher up just in front of him, going up against that, 4-3-3 of Nashville? Was the formation an issue, or was it just a lack of execution on behalf of the players?
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of movement in the middle of the field, so you saw different looks at times. I think it looked like the game plan was to overload Nashville's two midfielders and try to find a player facing forward and penetrate from there. But what we ended up seeing was Nashville were comfortable. They weren't really moved around in their 2 blocks of 4. The gaps weren't huge. And now all of a sudden, when you've got that much possession wheels and a pass gets picked off, you're not really set up to defend. And as the game went on, it was as though their counterattacks became a little bit more dangerous, and eventually in extra time were punished.
Yeah. And look, I think like over the course of the match, you're waiting for that one moment of brilliance.
Murphy, though, to your point.
Oh, big time. But the ability to create was there. Like that De Leon chance. He scored against DC United, scored against Atlanta in the playoffs. I don't think he played poorly by any means, provided that running, just didn't provide that finish. And moments later, another run down the left-hand side, he plays a ball. Josie just kind of gets caught up in behind the defender instead of making that near post run. And those are 2 clear-cut chances that Toronto FC could have, should have, would have taken advantage of, and then there's a different game. And look, I know others will point to how many times was the ball in the back of Toronto FC's net. Well, the player's offside. It's just like if you hit the post or you hit the crossbar, it doesn't count as a shot on target. If you score a goal and you're offside, it's not a goal. So that didn't bother me so much.
I'd add the Richie chance too when he moved over to the right-hand side and he got down the right-hand side, crossed it in, just missed Io at the back post as well.
Sure. I mean, there's a couple of those. And, you know, I give Johnston and Lovitz credit as well, because they clearly were willing to step high and man-mark at times Aro and Larea. And I didn't mind Larea playing down the left. And just to kind of explain, based upon Greg's rationale, which I believe will be the case, is oftentimes you want Richie Larea playing on the left-hand side because you want him going up and attacking more down that flank. And when the defensive line shifts into a back 3, when one of the fullbacks goes up, you want Omar Gonzalez playing centrally, not Chris Mavinga. You want Mavinga to the left and Aro to the right. So for the shape of the team, if you're trying to put together this puzzle, that's why you like Larea attacking down that left-hand side. I think it's something that's important to point out, because oftentimes people are questioning, well, why is Richie on the right? Why is he on the left? Why is Aro here? Why? This is kind of the thinking. And I would, bet my money, I bet my mortgage on the fact that Larea can go up and get a 22-year-old rookie.
And I know what you're saying there, but that the way the game played out is Michael dropped between the 2 center backs all game, lived there, and you had Omar coming out with the ball on the right-hand side, and Aro kind of in that in-between position of getting forward or sitting at home playing underneath like a fullback. So he didn't, when Nashville really made that field tight in the middle, there was no space to play, and it was screaming for our wide players to get the ball. That's what they were giving up. And you kind of had Aro underneath a little bit. Richie, who's uncomfortable getting to the byline on his left foot. De Leon sometimes came out there. We saw where their crosses went. And I thought as soon as Richie came over to the other side, there was more of a threat going forward.
There was, and that's what I'm kind of get to, because that's why the switch was made. That's why he was brought to the right-hand side, because once something doesn't work, and you played, so many games professionally before, Terry, you fall back on old habits, because Michael didn't start the match playing that deep. But then that's where he felt that he could be more of a quarterback. And as the game went on, he dropped deeper and deeper. And that's why. Exactly. And that's why things had to change.
And that'd be one of my questions. Was that the game plan? And I get that you want to build with one extra, but you lose a number higher up the field. Was there a ton of pressure from Nashville's front two where Michael had to drop back and help us build? Or could have he stayed in the next line on the other side of Nashville's front two?
Yeah, I just don't think that suits Michael. At this stage,
like to your point, when you're a little bit worried about your own game, or it's not necessarily you're trying to find that rhythm, you go to what works, and was that the solution for the game? I don't know.
Right,
but I never felt like Nashville were going to score other than a set piece.
Right. Or on when the game really opened up and they started to play on the counterattack, where I think communication and a lack of individual accountability ended up costing Toronto FC at a couple periods of times. But you just saw the frustration build, right? Like Alejandro Pozuelo, you know, I'm sure in the coming days we're going to find out that he's the MVP of Major League Soccer. I'd be shocked if he wasn't. He just that was his most ineffective game on the season. Maybe his most ineffective game for Toronto FC. Was it a product of a player just trying to do a little bit too much? Do you give credit to the way that Nashville defended him? What do you make of that? Because that's not something that we've seen out of Pozuelo, a player, trying to, like, he's the guy that maybe makes that extra pass, too often, but then he was trying to shoot from distance and do all these things that we haven't seen from him over the course of the season. I think it was just kind of a product of Toronto FC. The panic is the wrong word, but maybe trying to force the issue a little bit too much at times.
Yeah, against a side that wasn't forcing anything.
Right.
Nashville were like Portugal when they won the Euros, and they won it ugly. Greece. They had a difference maker and Mukhtar up front, and he was like the Ronaldo, and they go and win the champion. Like they get past us. But I'd say every star player needs a breather. You look at Rooney, you look at Messi in World Cups at the end of the year. These guys run out of gas. And for Pozuelo to be at his best, he has to be fresh. And the other ingredient is he needs a fresh team around him moving. And he doesn't necessarily have the athleticism to run past three players on his own. It has to be intricate. You need to see those combinations that we saw earlier in the year with him and down the right-hand side with Piatti and Auro. And it was all just a little bit too slow. The time it was quick was the time it led to the De Leon chance. But I think your star player, as much as he won't want it, he needs a breather.
Yeah,
and
I'm with you.
I'd say when it becomes difficult and you need your DP and your star player to dig deep and find something, there just wasn't that final product from him on the day, or Piatti.
No, and I think when the game's faster, it's better. I made the comment. I wasn't entirely disappointed with the way that they played at halftime. It could have been better. It was just so slow. If you watch the rest of these Major League Soccer playoff games, this game was so slow. Was it the pitch? Was it Nashville? What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think the onus is on us to shift that ball and move it quickly. But it's tough when there's a little bit of fatigue. There's maybe not the same rhythm because players are coming back from injury. You haven't played for 2 weeks. The pitch is extremely slow. Nashville have no interest in stepping out and regaining that ball. They're a tough team to play against, and for us to break that down, we need to almost be like surgeons. We have to be so precise, and we just lack that little bit of quality. And we just, rather than growing in confidence, we just kind of flatlined a little bit.
The goal was coming when it was scored by Rios in the 108th minute. That there was a bunch of uncharacteristic breakdowns across the back line where there was either ball watching, a lack of communication, a lack of stepping up and doing your role. And that's exactly what happened. Like, Mukhtar gets the ball in the middle of the park, runs through a number of Toronto FC players, puts a shot on target, more ball watching, and Rios just comes in all alone and smashes home a rebound. This is after something very similar kind of happened at the end of the 90 when Quentin Westberg made an outstanding save to push it to extra time as well. It was very weird seeing, Mavinga and Omar maybe a little bit uncomfortable with the pacey players in attack by Nashville, because overall they've been so solid on the air. Mavinga's had an outstanding campaign. It was just a little bit awkward to see, and it kind of played into the sentiment coming out of the game that Toronto FC wasn't as structured and individually responsible as we've seen over the course of this season.
Yeah, I think the word structure is important, and maybe our two center backs didn't have the protection that they've had all year, and they were a little bit exposed. And once you played over, your legs are gone. You're tired. You're now turning and running towards your own goal. Our shape's gone, and we're almost in crisis. In a moment that was actually going to be a positive one for us. Ralph almost picks off the goalkeeper's long ball. It falls to a Nashville player. And at that point on the right-hand side, Richie started to release. And that's why Omar and Mavinga were almost 2v2. There's a little bit of a crossover. I thought at that point, I was screaming at the telly, just like rugby tackle him, commit a foul at that point.
Yeah, professional foul.
Yeah, just kill the attack. Chris decides not to. And now it's almost a 1v1 Omar and Mukhtar, and that's not a matchup we love. Mukhtar's able to get a shot off, and the rest is history, unfortunately. And there were some warning signs, as you said before that, but we didn't really adjust. We just kept going on as normal.
I don't have too much more to say about this game, to be honest. Piatti, Lorea, valiant efforts coming back from injuries. Osorio clearly not 100%. Altidore not 100%. And as the game got a little bit longer, and you couldn't bring on defensive players to kind of cover and see the game out and force Nashville into an uncomfortable area, and you're the one that's going on forcing the issue, just things went a little bit sideways for the group. And it's not something that we've seen, especially in playoff football. I mean, this team has the third best points per game in playoff football in Major League Soccer history. That's the second best of any club in playoff football in terms of goal differential. This is just something completely out of the ordinary. And I think it speaks to the standard that's been set at this club. And when you have a little bit of a wobble, like so many teams do come playoff time, it just stands out that much more.
Yeah, and the club won't want to make excuses, but you see LAFC go out, you see Portland go out. It's definitely
Philadelphia go out.
Like it's a crazy year, and I think you've got to be careful when assessing the season or assessing a group of players over just one game. But I'd say there are question marks. When Ralph came on, I thought it was screaming out. For somebody to grab the game almost old school by the scruff of the neck and really dictate things. And it was almost too bad we didn't have a Benoit Cheroux to come on and control the game.
It is so fun. Sorry, Terry, I'm going to cut you off because I was thinking the exact same thing. And it wasn't just Benoit, it was Armando Cooper. I mean, that is a big difference between that team and this team. Two experienced players in the middle of the park, able to come off the bench and give you something different. With no Delgado in this game, you just didn't have it, did you? I love that you brought that up. I wrote that down.
Yeah, so it was just kind of fizzled out. And it's just, you can tell now the frustrations or emotions in both our voices, that it's just like, it's a tough one. It'll take time, and that's why I'm glad we're not playing the Canadian Championships. I think the guys really deserve. If we don't look at the season under a microscope, if we look big picture, they've sacrificed. They've put a shift in. They've left their families. They've played some incredible stuff over the year. They deserve some time at home with their families right now.
Sometimes the game story is reflected in the numbers. TFC 62% possession, yet outshot 21-12, and they only completed 6% of their crosses. That's the match story there. The other thing I wrote down, good team, bad night. It's a good team, this Toronto FC team. They finished second place, and we've documented this before. A completed Piatti Pozzuelo penalty against Montreal and not coughing up a 2-0 lead to DC United, who have 10 men away from finishing level on points with Philadelphia Union atop Major League Soccer. It's a good team. It was a bad night. I'm not sure I have much more to say other than that.
You know what? I was just kind of thinking, you know what would have been nice is if we could have somehow the weekend before the game, and we weren't in COVID times, organized a friendly against Atletico Madrid. Play exactly against a
A
harder
team that
version
would.
of what you're going to come up against. And all of those like I know if we played Nashville again, it would be a different story. And I know that sounds like sour grapes, but yeah, man, it's tough.
I was told that there was some talk of potentially playing that Canadian Championship game between uh, the end of the MLS regular season and the playoffs, which probably would have suited them fine as well.
But then we were a
Another
bit. It's a
competitive
tough
game.
one. We're a bit banged up as well, so it's. I don't know.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but certainly something to learn from, something to build off of, and in a way, this 2020 season coming to an end in a weird way like this is kind of apropos because the better team did not win. The better team on the night did, but the better squad overall comes up short. We'll get into looking ahead with Toronto FC in a moment's time, but instead of a high five on this episode, let's hand out some end of season awards, shall we? These are awards and things that we've seen, topics specifically that we want to deal with to kind of recognize some of the best of the 2020 MLS season for Toronto FC. So, Terry, instead of doing a team MVP award, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. When you have a player that will probably win the MLS MVP, it really kind of puts that to bed. But let's go deal with position by position, notwithstanding the goalkeeping position, which is a little bit different, and hand out the top player in each role. So as the top defender on Toronto FC this year, who do you want to hand out your Dunny, the Terry Dunfield Award to?
I think I have to give it to Chris Mavinga. He's been outstanding this year on the back of signing his contract extension. He's arguably one of the best. He is one of the best center backs, or he could play fullback or in a back three. He could play anywhere. And he's so important to us. His athleticism, understands our game model. He's on the pitch now. He's not in the treatment room quite as much. But he's been outstanding this year. I think that there's an asterisk. I don't know what position he plays, but I think Richie Larea deserves a shout out as well. He's been outstanding attacking from that defensive position. I think his positioning is getting better, and he's just a wild card back there, which makes him difficult to defend.
I'm giving the wheels up award to Larea. I'm going with Richie Larea for that reason, because he was the one true difference maker across that back line, Terry. Like every time that he was in the game, you stood up, you took notice, he was a facilitator. He changed the way that other teams would play Toronto FC. So I'm giving it to Richie Larea as my top defender. Midfielder.
Ooh.
I'll go first if you want.
It's been tricky because we haven't had a full clean bill of health all the way through. So it's a tough one. Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm going to go with Jonathan Osorio. Wearing the captain's armband, I think he took on that responsibility and came away with flying colors as a leader on the field. He was asked to play how many different roles within that midfield over the season, and he was the one constant. He was the one consistent. And when he went out through injury, I think he was really missed. And I don't know if he was at full strength heading into that final match either, as he kind of pushed through and perhaps came back a little bit too early. I thought that also it might not be reflected in the numbers, but I think that's a testament into the role that he actually played this year. So I'm going to give it to Oso.
Okay. Yeah, I can go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I would have liked to have seen a couple of those big dog performances down the stretch. But yeah, I'd say Markey was excellent. I'd say Michael before that next injury was solid when he came back. So yeah, and I've been impressed too with Ralph. So I'd say that there's yeah, I'll go with Oso.
Were you voting for the CPL awards? You're trying to give a vote to everyone here? I'm just gonna pick one, Dunfield. You're too nice. I'm like, no, it's this guy.
It's tough because I'd say that Chris and Larea, you can see how you can go with that, where there's a little bit of a mix in that midfield.
Top attacker. I mean, this is Pozuelo's award. It has to be 9 goals, 10 assists on the season. With a shout, I'll let you give a second shout because I know that Io Akinola is deserving of something here.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just too bad that Nashville game didn't set up for him. That there just wasn't a ton of space for him to run in behind.
Right at the death, I thought the ball was going to end up in the back of the net.
The one with
Richie. A little bit of a scramble. He goes over.
Scramble.
He's his back to goal. Oh, scrambled eggs, more like it. Oh,
yeah. I don't know. And then maybe like another way to beat a low block is go a little bit route one and kind of turn that midfield wall and play off of them or off of Josie, which we didn't do. I can't let the game go. Io. I think his goals per minute in itself speaks volume. I think he's not just getting on the end of things. If you go back through his goals, he's had a lot of work to do and created a couple of goals. I wouldn't be surprised if there's big offers for him in the offseason.
I would try to keep him at all costs. I still think that he needs a little bit more finessing, a little bit more work to completely grow into the game. I thought that him coming on and getting some playoff experience will be invaluable for him going forward. It's the first time that he has been in a position like that where he's going to be a player come playoff time that you're going to look to, right? So it's part of his learning curve. He's still 20.
And I know we're not quite there, but that would be a great segue into our last part is – to do that and give them opportunity, do you play with the front two and really commit to that next season? And if that's the case, then how do you get Pozuelo in the side? Do you play with a diamond underneath it? I don't know, because you've got Josie Altidore, who, if he's still with Toronto FC, he has to play.
Yeah. Let's go the top game or the top overall team performance on the season. Is there a game that stands out to you, which was Toronto FC's best on the campaign?
Oh, you go first.
I got the 2-1 win over Philadelphia in Hartford, where they absolutely played them off the field. They conceded the first goal. I think it was like the 3rd or 4th minute, and it was one-way traffic after that. They made Philadelphia look second-rate. That 2-1 victory for me. Honestly, they did and that was building off of the second half, the game prior, where they completely owned Columbus. It was their best back-to-back on the season. But the Philly, other than that early goal that they conceded, which was, like I said, in the 3rd or 4th minute, they played a perfect game. I'm going to go that Philadelphia game.
The game that stands out to me is after MLS is back. Do you remember the Canadian game series in MLS? And we hosted Vancouver at BMO. And Vancouver, the Resistance, Vancouver were all over the place. But that was the game Piatti scored from deep.
Yep,
we were outstanding. Yeah, we were like Barcelona. It was incredible. Vancouver couldn't get close to us. I think it took Vancouver 10 games to get over that one.
No kidding.
That was just total football. I was at BMO. I was lucky enough to be there. That was just, that was some good stuff on the night. Some
supporters were outside shooting off fireworks.
Yeah, that's right.
They need to get back in the stadium. It's just simply not the same. Goal of the season for Toronto FC. I'll go first again because I always like to let you think about it a little bit. Richie Larea, one-man gang style down the right-hand side, looking like Alberto Tomba doing the slalom through the Columbus Crew defense. That's my goal of the season. And it was up for nomination for MLS goal of the season, by the way.
I'm going to agree with you. And I couldn't describe it any better.
Save of the season. There was one that was nominated for MLS save of the season, but I'm not going to go there. It was a save against the Philadelphia Union that Q made, diving to his left, and he got back up and made the save on the rebound right after. I'm not quite sure if that was offside or not.
What was the one at MLS's back?
Well, that's the one I'm going.
Yeah.
That's the one that against what was it? It was against Ola Kamara, where it was just that reaction save. Q had no time to react, and then he just it was the first game back. And literally the ball was hit straight down. This was on the heels of Kamara being robbed by Q in the playoffs last year.
I think Caldwell even said, "Well done," believe it or not.
Did he? It was just a ridiculous save by Q. That's my save of the year at MLS's back. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
I'm going
Or
to
an
go
alignment there?
with.
Oh, no, you're going a different direction.
Yeah, I'm going to go a different direction. And it should have been, I was hoping it would have been Bono saving Bradley Wright Phillips when he went on to win MLS Cup, the save from Quentin Westberg against Nashville just before extra time.
Right.
That was, I thought that was going to be our turning point. But
right.
What do I know?
Could have, would have, should have. A great save, nonetheless, right there. Q has a highlight reel of them this season.
And we've got to give a shout out, I think, too, to Alex and the part he played. I think that'll be huge for his
confidence. 3 clean sheets in 3 games.
Yeah. And I think there'll be less demons in his head going into the offseason. If him and TFC feel like he needs to if Q's still our number 1, which I get that, it's probably easier for Alex and the club to move him on and the rest of the league to go, hang on, look, he's still a top young goalkeeper.
More looking ahead in just a moment. Our final award, it's the Terry Dunfield Special. It's the Academy Award brought to you by Dunfield. Which Academy graduate or player coming through do you want to give your award to for their contributions, their growth this season?
I want to first give a big well done to Greg Vanny. I remember sitting in a meeting with Shaquille Marshall-Ruddy, and it was so cool listening to the first team managers say, you know what, our culture's shifting. We're going to give our academy kids an opportunity when we feel the time's right. We've roadmapped it all out, and trust in how we're developing players here. He was saying this to his agent, his mom, and to Shaquille. And I've heard a lot of first team managers, especially with the pressures of, say, like a Toronto FC, or, you look at the big clubs around the world, Man City, Man United, say that, yeah, you know what, we believe in our academy. And then academy kids never play, or maybe Phil Foden gets a minute here or there.
Unless you're Manchester United, who's had an academy player in the team for like 2,000 something consecutive games. It's unreal. Anyways,
Man United's probably about it, but it was pretty cool on the back of that to see 5 MLS Academy players make their debuts this year and play real minutes. And at times, it wasn't pretty from the academy players, but Greg trusted in them and gave them minutes to really develop. So I think that's a huge positive this year. Best academy, or the player that made the biggest impression, I think, for sure it's Io. But I'm going to go with a little bit of an under. I think Ralph Prizzo is a player. I think he's a little bit like Michael Essien, with more minutes, more training sessions. You have a top player that you can rely on, and I think he'll be built into that midfield equation for next year.
Yeah. Io was in the first team last year, so I like the Prizzo pick.
Yeah.
I like calling it the Prizzo party. I cannot wait to see where this goes.
I just like that little moment that you saw from Jaquil at 15 years old against the Union, where he cut inside and hit that half volley. I know we were down 5-0. This guy's a difference maker, and he's still a young buck, but you'll see more of him next year.
15 years old, Terry. Shout out to Jaden. Everyone that made a contribution out of the academy on this season. Okay, time to look ahead to next season. There will be some questions. Pozzuelo on Friday said that the team needs some players, will need to improve, but it's not a question for him. But he does think that they'll need some new bodies. There's some issues with that. There will be new faces, as there is every offseason, but the core of this team is locked up on longer-term deals. A significant number of players are locked up for 2021. And maybe I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit, but I don't think that's a bad thing whatsoever, because this is still a very good team. And trying to recruit, adjust on the fly during a pandemic, and we're still going to be in a pandemic heading into 2021. It's not an ideal time to all of a sudden change everything on the fly, throw things in the mixer and expect it to come out on the good side, where, this club still, the expectation is to go out there and still win silverware. How much heavy lifting needs to be done over the course of this offseason?
I think like things right now are probably still emotional. I still think that the game hurts. I think you have to look at it with a real objective eye, and you can't go on emotion. But I'd say my gut saying there's a little bit of freshness needs to come into the team, and I don't think it's a full rebuild. I don't think you can ever do a full rebuild at a club like Toronto FC. But I think that there's some serious conversations that need to go on, and I think players might be asked for a potential new role, and it's not easy. After these guys have gone to war for you for 6 years, and these guys are winners, and the fact that they're so stubborn and believe in their ability so much that they probably won't accept that role. And there's a lot of guys on guaranteed contracts right now, so I think it'll be difficult to move players. But I think that the club has to come together on what the vision is for 2021.
I might sound crazy.
That was a lot of fluff.
No. Look, I'm going to come out and be brutally honest here, and it might surprise some people. I don't think TFC's far off. I don't think that this group is far off whatsoever getting back to an MLS Cup playoff. If this is a normal year, Terry, and you're playing Nashville in a two-game playoff setup, TFC goes on and wins that tie and moves on to the next round. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I think that there's some clear areas where this team needs to get younger. And other than that, I think that they're pretty damn close. Listen, Osorio and Delgado are going to be locks in the central midfield going forward. Auer and Larea at fullback, no problem. Pozzuelo, MVP in the middle of the park. You have Io up top, where I think that this team needs, and it might not be players going out. I think it's more players coming in. I think that you're going to need one or two center backs. I think you need to get younger at that position. I think that we saw that over the course of the season. If there's going to be a lot of games that play out the way they did this season, I just think you need to be younger at that position. And I think you need a different type of profile player playing at the wing positions. Toronto FC have a lot of very good technical players that like to come inside and play underneath. They're still missing those players. And we've been saying this for 2 years now. Those players that are quick, that are of the Raheem Sterling mode, the Jadon Sancho mode, players that can get in behind the back line, stretch the field, add some pace. TFC just doesn't have that profile player in their ranks, at least a player that's ready to play, because some of the younger players could potentially be that. I think it's such a critical position for Toronto FC to address. And although I really like what Pablo Piatti brought to the table this year, his connection at times with Pozzuelo was on another level, 4 goals, 4 assists, very good player. I would question whether it's a player like him that you need in this team, whether you can bring him back and still add a player of that profile that can be added to that team. Those are the two positions I'm specifically looking at, because if you have a younger, different profile player at center back and the wing positions, I think that this team's just about complete. What say you?
Yeah, I don't think many would argue with that. But it's not like Manchester City or Manchester, you can't just go and do that. You're in a salary cap league, and to make moves like that, players would have to leave. And it's too bad that it's not that injury, and you can't just add players to a squad like that. And then the other thing is a big part of why TFC have been excellent is the culture piece, and the right people have come into this building as well. And I think that's important. I agree with you. I don't think you need to smash up the core of this team, but it's just not that easy. And
but every year,
going to somebody that's been to war for you for so long, and saying, you know what, I don't know, man.
But I don't know who we're talking about here, because every season, 2, 3, 4 new players are brought into the team. Achara is going to be back healthy next year. It's going to be like a brand new player, someone that really excited Toronto FC fans.
Yeah,
the younger players get a little bit older as well. And naturally, some players get moved on. Think about the players that have moved on over recent years from Toronto FC. We lost Drew Moore last year. an absolute club legend. There will be older players that inevitably moved on. It still broke my heart when Beitashour was moved on by Toronto. Like, you know what I mean? There's core fundamental pieces that need
some
to
of our
shift.
guys, you need teams to take them. And, contracts aren't running out right now.
But at the same time, we've seen Vanderveels of the world, different players bought out for different reasons. Like, look, in any sport, I know that you say that this player can't be moved. It's just nonsense. Players get moved on who you deem to be immovable in any sport all the time. Context change. Their priority as a player changes over the course of their career. So I don't think it's impossible.
There's variables of the pandemic as well, and the financial hurt from that. So maybe that leads to opportunity. I don't know, but it's first and foremost, we need to see Greg Vanney sign his new deal, and then I think we can push forward from there.
Sure. Decisions need to be made before that. But what I'm trying to suggest is that I think that with 2 or 3 shrewd additions to this team, getting a little bit younger in critical roles, I think that this team is right back, competing for MLS Cup. This is not a bad team. This is not a teardown job. That's what I'm trying to articulate.
Yeah. And you did. And I think we agree. I'd say our number one, if you put a whiteboard up on and you say, this is what we need, is exactly what you said. Someone who can run past somebody out wide. And if we can find that, I think that just unlocks a ton for us.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Greg Vanney. His contract not settled as of yet. He will speak to the media along with the brain trust at Toronto FC, President Bill Manning, General Manager Ali Curtis next week after, the exit interviews that they'll have with each and every one of the players. And some things will become more clear at that time. I have no idea where Greg's priorities lay. What I do know is that he loves this city. He loves his club. His kids are in the academy. He has, helped build this team into a perennial MLS Cup contender. I would hate to see Greg Vanney someone give him an offer that he can't refuse elsewhere, whether it's in this league or abroad. I think that that's where his resume, I think that's where his reputation is right now, that there will be jobs that come available and there will be other offers. I just hope that the decision, the offer, what Toronto has to offer outweighs anything else that may, fall on his plate.
And I think it will. I think senior management and the board love what Greg has done. I think his trophies speak for themselves. And like what you said, I love the word, what he's built. And I think the club just needs to continue facilitating what he wants to build. And it sounds simple, but maybe not so much. And that's why it's taking a little bit of time to get over the line. But, I expect him to be here next season.
Sure. I think that he just needs to continue to be encouraged about the direction and vision of this club. And this club, time and time again, treats their players and staff to a level that's very rare across Major League Soccer. To a man, the players, the staff have been entirely complimentary about the way that they've been treated and how the club has gone above and beyond to make sure that they've been comfortable in Hartford or wherever they've gone. I just think that he needs to be reassured that, look, like in terms of the build, that he's able to bring in the players that he wants to fulfill his vision. That's it. And make sure the dollars and cents and everything else, the personal stuff, everything's taken care of. I just don't think that as a head coach that has a little bit of weight behind them based upon, continued success, I don't think that it's a simple decision for Vanney. I think that he's going to, put a bunch of things into consideration when it comes to weighing his options. So, but based on track record, I don't think that there's any worry whatsoever that this club isn't willing to step up and provide, what this team needs to continue to build and continue to win across Major League Soccer. The There's also going to be the conversation, and maybe we'll just finish this off here, about some of the veteran players. And I know that Josie Altidore's name has been on the tips of the tongues of many because, Josie himself will say it's been a frustrating season. It started slow. He was away from this team during the pandemic. He was eased back in just when he was hitting full stride. He had an injury setback, which hampered him over the course of the latter stages of the season. I do not think that Josie Altidore is a problem whatsoever if he's playing like Josie Altidore, right? As a designated player, like any DP in this league, you're expected to play to a certain standard. And this season was below standard for Altidore, just 2 goals scored. If he comes back and he's the Josie that we've seen over the course of the last how many years here in Toronto, I don't think it's an issue whatsoever. But if I'm Josie, my 2021 season starts today, started yesterday, started Wednesday after that season was lost. It's a big year. He can get himself back into the national team picture as well, with so many games being played for Olympic qualifiers, Gold Cup, World Cup qualifying for the U.S. men's national team. They need a top number 9. Toronto FC needs a top number 9. So if I'm Altidore, I dig deep and say, look, I am not done. I am still the old guy. 2020, it's been difficult, but I got to come back as a new and improved Josie Altidore for 2021.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just ranting.
No. I think that's I mean, what we saw the first couple games of the season and in snippets throughout the year is that Josie Altidore, when he's at it and he's fit, is unplayable. And I don't think anyone would take that away from him. We just want to see it more. And, if I'm in Josie's head right now, I'm kind of thinking, wow, this year was a strange one. It's not, I never really was able to put a run together. I know that I'm the best number 9 in this league. I love Toronto. I'm tight with the Toronto fans. I'll fight for these fans. I love playing my football here. I've still got another 2 years left here. And I'd be looking over at major championships too, like you said, with the US, and saying I need to get myself as fit as possible if I still want to play international games. And then it's on our sports science team to work with him to make sure that he's as fit as possible.
Sure. There's personal accountability as well, right? Like it's a mix of everything here. He just needs to come back as a better player next year. It's just a disappointing season for him all around. It was just a failure to launch.
He just influences so many. If he's like, I think the buy-in one's important. If I'm Greg and I have a chat with him and I feel like, he's engaged and I'm not questioning his professionalism at all here,
no,
then
of course not.
You know what? Let's get after it together. Let's go win another championship.
No one's questioning his professionalism. It's just like when you are a marquee player, when you're one of the highest paid players in the league, there's expectation. And FC Dallas got to a point in beating Portland where they played 2 teenagers ahead of 2 designated players. And they somehow survived. Like watching that game against Portland, they got battered for 90 minutes and snuck a goal, scoring a goal off a Portland goal kick. It was just gross. And somehow FC Dallas moved on. But you need your DPs to be your best players. Finally, Michael Bradley. I'm looking forward to seeing him come back next season as Michael Bradley. I give him a ton of credit for battling through 2 significant injuries, one leading into the season and getting fit and coming into MLS's back and looking excellent from the get-go. And then he suffered that injury mid-season that made coming back extremely tough on the player, but he never complains. He just goes through it, battles through. Now he's going to have a couple months to get himself absolutely right. Even Pozuelo said that over the final 3-4 games of the season, he was carrying a leg injury. Like there's a lot of players that have battled it, but what Bradley went through, he's an absolute warrior. Give him an off season, and I want to see him come back and play that position. At this stage of his career, Terry, he's a flat out number 6. He's a player that sits right on top of those 2 center backs and is a quarterback. I don't think he's the right side or the left-hand side of a holding 2. He is a traditional number 6 at this point, and he needs to be played there.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
And does that connect with where the club wants to go? And if we're going to continue to play with the six, then yeah, I think Michael can get back to the levels we saw at MLS is back. I think playing not a game every 3 days is going to help him. I think
No kidding.
missing a road trip is going to be important. We've seen that in world football. You're hearing Klopp, everyone complaining about how much football and travel, and you're just asking for problems. So I think
Pozuelo did that Friday as well, Terry. So
Okay.
they're playing every 3-4 days. They're going to kill players.
But yeah, I think for Michael, it was a little bit start-stoppy, which is tough when you're north of 30. But one thing I do know is Michael's mindset is second to none. And he will, he's probably in the plank right now.
Yeah, he said that he was frustrated by injuries for the season, but he's motivated, and I have no doubt he's going to come back with a vengeance for 2021. As we head into the offseason, stick with Toronto FC. Follow the social channels. We'll be providing updates as they become readily available. We're looking forward to kicking off the new season with the Canadian Championship, where technically Toronto FC will still be playing for silverware in 2020 as they'll take on Forge of the Canadian Premier League for the Voyageurs Cup. We're looking forward to that. That will be played in the first quarter of 2021. And as we go into the offseason, I think that once you become less emotional, like you said, you can look back at this Toronto FC season and appreciate what was accomplished through very difficult circumstances. The team, the academy graduates, Parizo, Nelson, Marshall Ruddy getting in the team, Larea proving to be a top Major League Soccer fullback, Ayo Akinola's 9-goal season, all kinds of success there. So there is lots of positivity heading into the future for Toronto FC. And he got one kick-ass TFC podcast to talk about it all on a weekly basis as well.
Nice. I just want to give a big thank you out to MLSC, the operations staff, management team, the players, because through the pandemic this year, my highlights 100% have been watching our first team play.
Jerome, you want to come on in? Our producer, Jerome Chang, has done outstanding work, not just with us, but across the Toronto FC content team over the course of the season. Great job, pal. Any final words that you would like to share?
It definitely, in my short time here, this has been the weirdest season to have worked on by far. But honestly, just you guys covered this season so perfectly in this episode, just summing everything up and questions that we're asking ahead. But yeah, this has been such a team effort. Maybe the closest team effort I would see of all the years I've worked here, and we haven't been around each other physically at any given point, which is impressive. And so, big
I think I've seen you once this year. I think I saw you
crossed paths
twice. The first
we waved
games.
Across while I was down at the pitch, and I think you were up at the top there. So we saw each other from very far away. But shout out to you guys for keeping us covered throughout the season for sure. And a big shout out to the content team. We got to bring on Erica to help us with the game day production this year. And she did a fantastic job with our pregame lives after 90s. Greg Veerman with the All for One team. Traveling with the team the entire time. He finally is home again and finally gets to be with his friends and family and his partner, and just getting to be home again is really huge for him. But just having to go through all that, Kylie, who we got to bring on and off throughout the season, Eric and Shane just doing fantastic work on the digital side. It was really just such a strong effort to bring fans as much access as possible, maybe more than we have actually been able to do when we were able to be around the team. So hopefully fans really enjoyed it. We got a lot of really kind words from everyone. So thank you, fans, for supporting us throughout too. And yeah, just,
let's get back to BMO.
Let's get back to BMO, right? That's exactly it. Let's hope that the next time we get to thank you, we get to thank all of you in person.
No kidding. Anything else, Dunfield? You good?
All good.
That a boy. And we shouldn't forget, it was a year of great change on a number of levels. Social change came. We came together. We united. even though we were from afar. And these are things that are going to make our community, our group, our team that much more stronger as we forge ahead, both on and off the field. To echo Jerome's statements, I want to thank you, the fans. Look, it hasn't been easy on you whatsoever, not being able to be together on a week-to-week basis inside BMO Field, doing something that you've come to enjoy and expect over the last 13 years. We need to get back doing this the way that we do here in Toronto, which is better than anyone else in Major League Soccer. Your support was felt from afar, and let's do it again all together in 2021. On behalf of Dunfield, on behalf of J. Rome, I am Wheels. This has been Come On You Reds.